After Talk Radio, you're in to all things music.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to Intersect Radio. Thank you all for joining in today. And I hear Mike Rose singing in the background there. Wow. It's kind of surreal, isn't it?
Very, very surreal.
Oh, man. My guest today here at Intersect down in the hole is the one and only Mr. Jan Eric Volz.
Glad to be here down in the hole. This is a great little hole. Man.
Yeah.
I love this.
He's founding member and bassist for the 77's, man. Yeah. 77's executive producer at Exit Records.
Oh, I'm trying to forget that part, but yes.
Well, I've been trying to get Jan here for a while, so I'm glad he's on the road. He's a road dog.
Glad to be here, off the road.
Yeah. So it's been a challenge getting him to actually stay at home for a while. But thank you, man, for saying yes and coming down for the latte.
My pleasure, Aaron.
Yeah, for the hot latte. Cheers.
It's good for me to be able to come down and hang with my old friend. This is wonderful.
Yeah, man.
You bet.
That's good.
Yes, sir.
So, Jan.
Yeah.
Man, we saw each other a couple of weeks ago at Rick's.
We did.
Concert.
Uh-huh.
And Eric.
My son was with me, yes.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I was going like, dang, dudes, come on. I haven't seen you guys in ages.
I told Eric I was going to go down to that event, and he says, well, who's there and everything? I said, well, Aaron's going to be there. He says, I'm in. So, no kidding. When he knew you were going to be there, he wanted to come down, and then as soon as it was over, he made a beeline right straight across the front of the stage, through all the chords and the guitar players, and made his way back to you.
That's right, man.
It was great.
It was great. It was so great. That little kid was bouncing on the sofas the last time I saw him. But, okay. Man, we got a lot of 77's fans that listen to this program.
I'm thrilled.
Mostly, I would say maybe 90% of the audience are 77's fans.
Well, that's because of you, Aaron.
Well, no, it's not because of me. It's because they love the Sevens. And till this point, it's just been me and Mike. And now I got you. And then I got to hunt down Tootle.
Oh.
And get Tootle to speak.
That'd be great.
That would be great. That might be pretty difficult. I don't know. Maybe not.
I don't know. I think he'd be here in a heartbeat if he knew how to do it.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, a lot of people don't know, your beginnings and the start. All they know is the 77. So kind of fill us in on how it all started. You're from Placerville?
Placerville, California, kind of between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe.
Mm-hmm.
And, really where it all started, the genesis of everything was that I skipped church 3 Sunday nights in a row with the pastor's son to go watch the Ed Sullivan Show and saw the Beatles. And I thought to myself, I want to be one of those. And so, obviously needed a guitar and begged my dad to give me a guitar. He says, I'll get you a guitar, but you have to promise you'll only play in church.
Really?
Yeah. And true story. So, but then, immediately you get into a band and you start playing in bands, and we would rehearse together and learn, some Beatles songs, some Stones tunes, things by the Beau Brummels, etc. And I remember one time, and my dad told me, I'm going to give this to you, but you got to stay in church, because if you don't, if you start playing for clubs and dances, you'll start carousing, chasing women, drinking, smoking, and it's going to ruin your life. And so,
what church were you going to as a kid?
It was just a fundamental Bible church, a place called Calvary Bible in Placerville. And so one night we did get a gig at what was a dance down at a place called the Shakespeare Club. And I told my dad I was just going to go over to my friend's house and spend the night and take my guitar. We were just going to play guitars together and whatnot. And then one of my other friends called the house, and he said, "Hey, I heard Jan's playing the dance tonight." My dad answered the phone. He says, "Oh, really?" So I remember standing up there on the stage. We were playing these copy tunes of those old 60s acts, and I looked through the smoke and the darkness, and I see my dad leaning on the wall in the back of the room. And we took a break, and I stepped outside in the back, and my dad came around. And he said, "Hey, I got to say I'm disappointed, but you guys sounded pretty good." And then I continued to play music for years and years, and never smoked, but I started drinking, chasing women, and it ruined my life. So
just like he said.
And then, I played in club bands, bar bands all through the years. And then at one point in time, ended up traveling with a girl who later became my wife and mother of my 2 great kids. She had been raised in a way that she had no spiritual background really to speak of. And one night I remember I was in Cheyenne, Wyoming, going to play a club gig, and I left, and she was flipping the TV by, and Billy Graham was on, and she started railing against all the crooked TV preachers. And I said, actually, and I'm totally away from, I was backslidden, basically, totally away from everything I've been raised on, and I'm raised in the church. And, but I defended Billy. I said, "Hey, if there's any of them that are really right on and worth watching, this guy's the one." And I went off and played my music, and I came back, and she was full of questions. She says he kept talking about a personal relationship, which she'd never heard of. And she watched him 3 nights in a row. And the end of that, she says, "I want this personal relationship." I said, "Oh yeah, no problem. It's easy. Pray with me here." And then I did, and it hit me that it was really more for me than her. And I thought, "Oh man, this is going to ruin my club gig." So I came off that road trip. What
would the guys think?
Oh man. Well, I just knew that, that my lifestyle and the church didn't mix. Or at least at that time I thought so. And so I came off that road trip. My older sister goes, "Hey, it's good to have you guys back." She says, "I started going to church again." And I'm going, "Great. Well, now Maggie wants to go to church too." So the 2 of them started ganging up on me, and they started going to a place called Warehouse Ministries in Sacramento. And they were doing concerts with a lot of Maranatha bands.
How'd you end up in Sacramento?
Well, I mean, being from Placerville, I went to university in Sacramento. And, the band that I played with, this group of guys, everybody based out of there. So,
but you were in that. You guys used to tell me about that band where you used to do flips and stuff. It was almost. It wasn't rockabilly, was it?
Well, I was in a group that we were known as the Train, which when the other Train came along, we should have sued them and made some money. But we were the original Train, and we started doing this 50s thing. We saw the movie Woodstock, and the group Sha Na Na was on there, and we had to play for a 61 class reunion, and we thought, let's put together some songs from 61 and we'll go be a hit at this thing. So we put these together, and the place went wild, and we thought, man, we should throw that into our club gig that we're doing. Excuse me. So we started playing these 50s and 60s songs in the middle of the club gig, but we made it a special event. We would do it at midnight on Friday and Saturday nights in these clubs. There was a place called the Candle Rock Lounge there in Sacramento. We used to play there quite often and go in for, week-long thing. And on Friday and Saturday night, we would play this 50s show. And then we started dressing the part and trying to look like the Sha Na Na deal. And so that thing actually became more of a draw than the original band.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and then I continued, started going to church, and little by little, ended up leaving that group and working as part of the staff there at Warehouse.
Well, but go back to that. Go back to the train. Okay.
Yeah.
Because, you guys used to tell me about just how wild your stage show used to be, and how people were jumping off risers.
It was a real vigorous show, and there was a point in time in the middle of, Rockin' Robin or one of those songs that I'd kind of get back and I would do a somersault flip. I started doing it. I kind of would bend over and you'd put your head on the floor and play, and then pretty soon I started rolling on over while I was playing, tuck the guitar kind of underneath, and pretty soon it got to where I'd get way over in the backside of the stage, take 3 steps, and just do no hands down. You're playing the guitar and do a flip in the air. And somewhere there's one 8mm movie of that, and I've not seen it in years, but it's like it was pretty crazy.
Maybe it's on YouTube.
Oh, I doubt it, man. That's unfortunately even the 77's. I look at YouTube and everything now, and I think, man, you know what? We missed it, but we were just a little too far ahead. There's very little video content of us, and with the train and Ricky and the Red Streaks, which was a 50s act, we changed the name for that midnight show. We became Ricky and the Red Streaks. It was,
and you were playing guitar.
I was a guitar player at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up, guitar lessons and playing guitar. And then when I ended up in the 77's, Mike was obviously a far greater guitar player. And we thought, well, shoot, we need a bass player. So I slipped from guitar to bass, and that became my instrument.
So you started going to Warehouse.
Yep.
And how did you get involved in the music?
There was a handful of musicians there, and Louis Neely, the pastor there at that church, he said, hey, we've got a bunch of musicians and we need to kind of put some organization to it, and we'd like to get some of them recorded and whatnot. Can you help us out with that? So I ended up joining the staff there. I remember he said, I'll give you what I can. Can't guarantee much. I remember he said, I'll give you $100 a week. And I said, I'll take it. And I was married at the time. And I went home. I said, well, okay, I've got a new job. She goes, oh, cool. I said, yeah, I'm making $100 a week.
And you had stopped playing.
Stopped playing. I had left the train, Ricky and the Red Streaks. And so it was, it truly was a leap of faith, but it was one of those times when it was really great. I had that kind of faith to go, you know what, God will take care of it. And I think at the end of the first week, he actually gave me $125.
Oh,
so
you got a raise.
Made a huge difference, yeah.
Right.
But it was truly just when you're in your early 20s and I was mid 20s at that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike was already there, or did he come later?
No. Louis, the pastor, he came to me one day and he said, listen, I've got a friend from San Jose and he's going through some really hard times, and we're going to bring him up to Sacramento. He was living in the Bay Area, and I'd never met him before. And they said that this kid Mike Rose coming to town, and we're going to keep him here for a couple of weeks, just kind of help him chill out and figure out what's going on with life. And Louis asked me, he said, would you mind if he stays with you while he's here? And I said, oh, that's fine, man, bring him up. So we didn't have any children at the time, so Maggie and I set up a spare room, and Mike moved in with us, and he stayed for about 6 months.
Wow.
And a great guitar player, and he and I had some fun just hanging around and playing a little bit, but had no intention of ever playing music with him at the time. It wasn't something I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm. So you're just playing like during worship service?
At the time, yeah. I was starting to do worship things at church.
Was Jimmy A. Begg there?
Jimmy was there. I've known Jimmy probably longer than, like, for the whole Nashville team that's kind of out here now from Sacramento. I've known Jimmy for 35 years.
So Jimmy was there before Mike?
Oh, yeah. Jimmy was there before me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Didn't know that.
Jimmy was there from, the day I walked in, I think they introduced me to Jimmy. He said, hey, this guy's a fellow musician.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So whose idea was it to start a band?
Part of the thing that the church was doing there is that there were weekend concerts from a lot of Southern California bands that were coming through, and they would stop, play Sacramento. And we wanted to have a way to advertise those concerts a little bit more grassroots type of a fashion. You couldn't advertise on the radio per se. So we said, let's put together a group of guys from the church. We've got drummers and guitar players and so on and so forth. Let's put these guys together, and we'll send them out and do noontime concerts at all the colleges in the area. And we can pass out flyers to bring young people to the church for the weekend concerts that we were doing. So we thought it's a great way to, to get them together. So we put this group together. It was Mike Rowe, a young fellow named Mark Proctor, who preceded yourself, Mark Tootle, Sharon McCall, and forgive me, but I don't remember the bass player's name. There was a fellow that was playing bass. So I kind of helped from the staff side of things, organize that, put that together, help them set up a performance schedule and a rehearsal schedule and everything. And about a week or two before these things started, we had concerts set up to play Davis, play UCSD in Sacramento, play the community colleges, about 6 or 10, concerts. And a week or so before it happened, the bass player couldn't get off his work at lunchtime and go out and play them. He was like, well, you quit this idea or you're fired, So he quit. And we're going, well, great, man. We're about a week and a half away. And Mike looks at me and he goes, well, dude, can you play the bass? And he had a bass guitar, which I didn't. And I said, well, I think so. I might have been sitting here with you guys in all these rehearsals. And so he handed me the bass, and I became the bass player for this group that we just scratched together to go out and do these things. And that actually became the name of the group,
right?
The Scratch Band.
Scratch Band,
because we just scratched them together and off we went. So that's how I ended up in this group. We played all those noontime concerts. We finished that up, and when we got done, and most all of that was original material. Some of that supplied by Steve Scott, some of it written by Mike, some of it written by Mark Tootle, and we finished with that series of concerts, and we all looked at each other and went, man, this was kind of fun. We actually should keep this together and continue on. So we did.
Did it help the attendance on Saturday night concerts, weekend concerts?
Those flyers did, yes. And to the brilliance of Mike Rowe, we would pass these flyers out, and originally it would say, like Daniel Amos, Saturday Night Warehouse Ministries, blah, 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 free. And Mike says, that's bad. You don't want to call them free concerts. He says, you need to put on there no cover. I thought, no, we were trying to reach the unchurched.
Yeah.
And free makes it sound like, well, if it's free, it's no good.
Right.
If you put on there's some musicians playing and there's no cover, I'm in.
Yeah. Just no free beer.
Well, we were thinking about offering free beer too, but that didn't meet the muster.
No.
But so that was the genesis of the 77's, was that group of people.
Was a recording studio there at that time?
There was a small 4-track studio, but it was not meant for recording musicians. It was really more for a radio show that they were doing out of the church.
Who was doing a radio show?
Mary Neely, the pastor's wife.
Yeah. What was it about?
It was a program that originally was called Rock and Religion, and it later converged. It later became what was known as Rock Scope. This is prior to deregulation of radio. Radio stations were required by law to run at least 30 minutes of religious programming. They had to have some news. They had to have religious programming. They had to have, a number of different categories of things to make the airwaves fair. And I think during the Reagan days, they came in and they deregulated radio. So a lot of stations dropped their religious stuff. But so there was a need for really good sounding religious programming, is the way the radio stations looked at it. And this show would interview musicians, some of them Christian musicians, some of them not, but musicians who had kind of a spiritual undertone to their stuff. And the premise of the thing was to investigate the the spiritual effects and influences that music had on the populace, Christian or non-Christian.
Okay.
And, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Beatles. The Beatles actually had, especially with their Eastern religious influences and everything they had. And then eventually, I mean, the drug use and that kind of thing. I mean, musicians of that nature, I don't think the Beatles ever said, hey, everybody should go take drugs. I think that in the middle of I Am the Walrus, they're saying, smoke pot, everybody smoke pot. But without being blatant, they led they were the kind of the forefront of it. They led an entire generation down a road we never intended to go.
Yeah.
Stephen Stills, Love the One You're With. I mean, the Stones, I mean, all of them really began a landslide of undermining the moral fiber. And I love their music, but I have to recognize that they were kind of the beginning underminers of the moral fabric of the country in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So who do you think was the probably the biggest guest you had on that show? No, but after a while, Mike started doing the show, right?
He did. Mike began to be somewhat of a producer for it. We brought him in, and he was one of the writers for the show. Mary would speak, and many times Mike, he was like the sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
His understanding of the rock and roll, just the whole music scene, was invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote a lot of those shows. For example, like we did interviews with Ray Manzarek and a fellow named Danny Sugarman, Manzarek was part of the Doors.
Right.
Danny Sugarman had written a biography and whatnot. He had, as a little kid, followed Jim Morrison and the guys around, and there was a tremendous, they had a lot of influence, and there was a big spiritual side of that thing. We ended up doing an interview with Jerry Garcia.
Did he come up to the warehouse?
No, we went to them.
Oh, really?
And then there would be interviews with guys like Roger McGuinn, who had become a believer, and Chris Hillman, both from the Byrds.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there was Barry McGuire, the fellow who had, the song Eve of Destruction.
Right.
In the middle of, I was listening to a Mamas and Papas song the other day, Creek Alley. It was like, McGuinn and McGuire still are getting higher in L.A., you know where that's at. And both McGuinn and McGuire that was a Mamas and the Papas tune. Years later, they both had come to saving understanding of Christ, and both of them came to the warehouse.
Wow, and performed?
Not together, but at different times.
Yeah.
And here at one point, they were like in the song and the epitome of what it meant to be in L.A. getting higher.
Right.
So I remember talking to those two guys, and it was, so that's kind of that whole scene was about trying to marry just the spiritual with the unspiritual, and to try to bring an understanding and shed light on what was really going on in life. So it was an interesting time. But some of the artists, and then we even did a show with the Scratch Band.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You interviewed each other?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, this was before Mike was doing any interviewing, and Mary came in and said, well, you guys are a bunch of ex-rock and rollers. What's it like now you're all singing a bunch of stuff that sounds like it has some kind of spiritual value to it? Can you tell us about that? So the thing was approached not to try to get people converted. It was done to try to help people open their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually a great thing. Then when deregulation came, there was no need for that kind of stuff on the radio, so the thing kind of withered away. And then a recording studio was born out of that small studio, especially with the advent of all the groups that started showing up at the church.
Who was that? What was the name of the rock group that was there?
Really great rock band.
No, the metal guys.
Oh, those guys. I was going to say Seawind, but do you remember Seawind?
Yeah, I do.
They came actually and played a show there because I think Paulina and I can't remember the drummer's name. Bob Wilson, maybe?
Yeah, they were husband and wife.
Husband and wife, and they were believers and drugged the rest of them along.
The devil was a liar.
Yes.
That tune.
Yes. Yeah. No, the metal band was First Strike.
First Strike. Yes.
First Strike.
I can picture that album cover with the girl with the big hair throwing a rock through the window or something. It's like Yeah, First Strike.
Oh,
Man, I wonder where those guys are now.
Gosh, Pat Boylan, and I don't remember the others. I do remember, though, not necessarily a road we want to go down, but that Mary had a young kid named Robbie who she wanted to make a lead singer, and she inserted him into that band, and they hated it. They're going, "No, this is not us." She's going, yeah. You need to keep this kind of group, and eventually it destroyed them.
I didn't know that's how that came about.
Yes.
Dang.
Oh man, I'm telling you. So I mean, there was a point in time there when we came in and we built a 24-track studio. Mike was working at the church, and they were trying to help keep a lot of us alive. So Mike was brought on board, probably given his $100 a week in order to write for the radio show. And I think Mark Tootle was doing some janitorial, and I mean, a lot of us, we ended up working there just to try to keep us alive, so that we could pursue the
because we really couldn't play anywhere.
No,
it wasn't permitted or allowed there for a long time until Peacock comes along.
Yeah,
changes the whole thing.
Well, he was a pseudo secular guy.
Yeah,
and so hey, we got this guy who is willing to come along, and so Charlie had a lot of pull with Mary and them, and we ended up building studios and probably going directions that they hadn't thought of. But Charlie's going, well, we need a studio, and so we built one. Thanks, Charlie.
Really? Was Daryl there at the time?
He was a young kid, Daryl Zachman, who was he was a great engineer. He started working and helping to engineer and record a lot of the stuff on that radio program.
Okay.
And then when the studio came about, Daryl slid into that spot, and he acted as engineer in most of our records in the early days. Yeah.
Now, are any of those shows archived or available?
I don't think they are online. However, I have a crate that has just about every show in it.
Really?
Yeah.
You should put them on YouTube or something. Find us some way to.
I should just donate it all to you.
No.
Actually, I have. Man, I've not thought about that in years.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get that to you. Randy Layton has been begging me to give them to him.
Really?
I'm afraid to give them away. It's kind of a funny thing. I mean, I've had this since day one, and it almost feels wrong to I can't throw them away.
Oh no, you can't do that.
And if I was to give them away, I need to keep it more in the family. And Randy's a great guy, and I'd love to help him out. But
I think Randy would
closer to home.
I think Randy would do good by him.
I'm going to give them to you, and then if you want to leak them to him, you can. They really need to come. They're all on vinyl, and they need to come off of vinyl, go to the digital realm, and off.
They're on vinyl.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we would record these things. It was a weekly show. They would record it, master it, and so we had to stay like a month ahead, and they were all on vinyl. And then you'd ship those records. I remember at one time there was 400 radio stations were running that thing. And we'd get a shipment in each week, and we'd box them up, and we'd send them out to every mainstream rock and roll station.
And how many times you did this? Once a week?
Once a week.
Really?
It was a weekly show.
Wow.
Yeah. Every now and then we'd get behind, and so we'd send the Jerry Garcia show out again or something like that.
Yeah.
It was
the archives.
It was a huge undertaking for a small handful of people that just had a wild idea.
Wow, I didn't know they were all in acetate.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I've got a box it's 3 feet deep of rock and religion vinyl.
Dang. Well.
Yeah.
Wow. Didn't know that. Yeah. But
we need to get to at one point to how you and I got together, but we'll
get there.
Am I running out of time?
No, you're not running out of time, not yet. But there's something more I wanted to ask you about the scratch band.
Yeah.
And when did you decide to become the 77's, and how did that?
The chance to go ahead and record and do an actual record
after the studio was built, or before?
It was right in the beginning of when the studio was built. We did we were able to find a 24-track MCI 24-track machine that I went down, took my van, went, and I kind of negotiated this stuff. Mary and Lewis didn't have any idea. They're just going to find us a machine, and I found one at the record plant in San Francisco. Rubenston?
David Rubinson?
David Rubenston. I went down there and I negotiated the thing on the phone with him and went down there and, picked it up and we gave him the money and whatnot. But then we had to pay for it. And I remember that Maranatha Music gave us 10,000. There was a strings album of worship music or something. And we were selling them to the people at the church and anywhere else we could to try to generate. I think that machine cost us $25,000. It was about $1,000 a track. And
wait, what were you selling?
A record that was given to us. Chuck Smith at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. He was a big supporter of all this stuff. And he says, listen, I can't give you guys money per se to do it, but we can ship you guys. I think they sent us 5,000 or 10,000 of the, Christian strings, and it was like of all the worship choruses, Father I Adore You, and all those in strings, kind of like the Hollywood strings.
Yeah.
But instead of the Beatles tunes, it was.
Was it what became Maranatha?
Yeah, in fact, it was Maranatha at the time, Maranatha Music, and so Maranatha Music basically shipped us all these records. We sold them. I went to Frisco and bought this 24-track. Then, we needed a console, and so. I don't remember where this came from, but there was a board of 24-channel mixing console, not even a name brand. It was almost proprietary. It had come out of Gold Star Studios in Hollywood. It was the console that Phil Spector used to record, like all the Ronettes tunes and lots of Beach Boys songs were recorded on it. You've Lost That Love and Feeling.
Really?
Righteous Brothers.
On that board?
On the original board that we had in there. We had to move the board in before we built the walls around the studio because it was 10 feet long. Big metal frame and everything else. And when the Sevens, so we recorded our first record on that. And I don't recall, what the board was, but it looked like a Buck Rogers, something out of a Buck Rogers spaceship. It had knobs 4 inches in diameter, and it kind of looked like the one that's on Abbey Road. And you see there's these great big knobs on it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
like a science lab or something.
So we recorded that first record on that board.
Wow.
And then went down and bought a couple of great big Yuri speakers for the speakers in there, and we bought an echo plate for some reverb, and
some effects.
Little by little, I was picking up. I think about this stuff now. I've got a home studio, and some of the gear. I think about this when I'm buying little pieces. I bought 4 LA2A compressor limiters.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2 or 3 1176 and all this Yuri, and these things now are going for $5,000-$6,000 a piece, and then we picked up a couple of U87 microphones and just kind of pieced it together and little by little built that. It was actually pretty cool.
So they're pretty expensive now because they're like classic pieces of gear.
Oh, it's vintage stuff, and it just had that warmth and real soft compression that you don't get when you're running your standard Logic Pro and you pull a compressor out of it. They slam it pretty hard. Those things were, very, very gentle with the sound and real warm. Mm-hmm. All of it analog, everything.
Okay.
So that's where the studio came about.
Okay. And so then you figure you do the record, and and how do you get the record deal? How do you distribute it after that?
So Maranatha really wasn't that interested in the band, but we had a relationship with a fellow named Stan Moser at Word Records out of Dallas, and we thought we don't want to be on a Christian label, but they allowed us to go ahead and start our own label mast, and so we called it Exit Records, and we thought we're going to put the record out on that, and Word will just distribute it for us. Mm-hmm. Well, when we got that thing in place and we started to do this deal, we thought, well, we can't use the name Scratch Band anymore. It's kind of, we need a real name. And so I was actually teaching the book of Daniel at the time in a home Bible study, and was fascinated with all the detail and the exactness of times and things that were found in Daniel 9 pertaining to 77's being to turn upon the nation of Israel. And it's too in depth to go into here, but it's a fascinating thing. Ultimately, the 77's scripturally brings about the culmination of the age and you enter eternity at that point.
Correct.
And
yes.
So that's kind of where that,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was always the speculation of, well, is it because 7's a perfect number? Forgive your brother 70 times 7 and all
Mm-hmm.
that. But it was kind of fun to have all those different layers and to leave a little bit of mystery behind it
Mm-hmm.
and let people kind of try to discover, so, and they came up with all kinds of stuff, but that's where the name came from when we needed a label, a name to put on the band as we got this label deal.
Mm-hmm. Whose idea was the big pink 77, the numbers?
That probably came from the guy that was the art director for it, Mark Swanson. And it's
I remember Mark.
Origami.
Yeah, origami. Right.
And the original, he actually did with paper. None of that stuff was digital. It's all,
right.
When you did a record like that, you had to create the artwork physically. So everything's there was like a paper cutout, of the set. In fact, he had done this thing and he cut them out and pasted them on. And we thought, oh, that's cool. Let's use that. And,
back in the day,
never had anything to do with anything, but it was just, why origami? I don't know. It's because he could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then later on, you guys get Charlie. Yeah. Charlie comes into the picture, and Charlie is in Vector at first, right?
Correct. Steve Griffith, Jimmy Abegg, and Charlie Peacock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Group called Vector.
Yeah. And for their first album, I think Steve is going to try to be the lead singer, the bass player, and the drummer.
Correct.
Yeah.
And he was good at all of them.
Yeah.
But Charlie was a strong personality, and Jimmy was a strong personality, and musically on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So the group put out one record, and then Charlie exited, and it became just Jimmy and Steve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But that's how I got to Warehouse.
Correct.
Because Charlie Charlie recommended me to do the record.
Yes. Yeah.
And because it wasn't working.
And that's when Mike and I were going, dude, we got to get him on drums.
I remember that first, that's how I would run into you guys down in the hall. And of course you had the kitchen,
Yeah.
And everybody was telling me about you guys, Jimmy and Steve. And I remember watching a video of you guys at Greenbelt.
Oh yeah.
Once.
Yeah.
And I looked at the video and I was going, and I heard this big sound, this rocking sound, and I looked there and you guys looked like the Beach Boys.
Yeah, we dressed like the Beach Boys.
I was like, what? Man.
Lavender pants and frilly tops and stuff. Oh man.
Okay, that's cool.
Oddly enough, somebody found some video footage here recently of us playing Greenbelt, playing the song Ping Pong, and it's frantic. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good version of it that we did. And but it's like I watched that. Of course, we looked like the Beach Boys, but it was as rocking as we could get in those days.
And nobody was moving anywhere. You're just standing there playing, and this frantic music was coming out, and it's just like you're just standing there like, oh well.
Well, this video that's on YouTube right now, I suppose it's Ping Pong of the Abyss 77's at Greenbelt. I think it was about 83. On that one, we're jumping on and off the riser. And
you are?
It's a little bit more frantic.
Okay. All right.
It's not bad.
And Tootle was on keyboard?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because the one I saw, the music was frantic, but you guys weren't frantic.
Well, that song never saw the light of day the way it was meant to be until you played it. Oh my gosh! I remember when we'd play that tune together. It was blistering.
Well, I thought it should be blistering.
Yeah, I don't want to jump ahead, but I'll never forget. We ended up Well, it's when we went to return to England, and we were going to go over there for, I think, 3 weeks or a month almost.
Mm-hmm.
So the fellow that had been playing drums originally, everybody had day jobs, and he couldn't get off of his day job to leave for a month.
Right.
Which is when we said, well, can we hire you in, Aaron? And when you came on board, I remember Mark and Mike and I saying, holy cow, man, you brought, because of your background, you brought to the group a level of professionalism, at least in your attitude, where we thought, man, we're going to lose this guy if we don't step it up, quit screwing around here, and actually become, meet his expectations, because this guy's going to expect a lot out of us, man. We're a bunch of amateurs, and he's played with the best of the best. And that, oh boy, that was a godsend, because that really helped us. It really did. It made us go, you know what, time to kick it up here.
Well, it helped me too, because it gave me an outlet to really express myself, because you guys didn't say, no, don't do that, do this, or you let me do what I wanted to do. and I being the kind of person I am, I wanted it to fit, so I wasn't trying to do some wild, outlandish thing in a context that wasn't appropriate, Yeah. So it was great fun. I remember when we went over to Prestatyn.
Yep,
it's where I got saved. Actually,
I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that was pretty intense.
We would, for the sake of the listeners, we would get together, and we were believers, but we were trying to play clubs and everything. We didn't want to be a Christian band. We were a bunch of believers who wanted to play music. And when we went to Europe that time, we would always pray just a short prayer before a show. Mm-hmm. I call it a show. Before we would perform, we'd always just kind of get together and just like Lord, okay, use our gifts and talents out here and touch somebody, and amen. And we never planned it. It wasn't like, okay, Mike, tonight's your turn, or Mark, or whatever. And we were at that thing in Prestatyn, and you had been attending some of the daytime seminars that they'd had there, and it was a Christian-based with all those people. It was. I mean, they had all kinds of speakers. Ravi Zacharias.
Yeah.
I think even Franklin Graham was there, and a number of different people like that. But I'll never forget, we were standing there just kind of quietly waiting for one of us to step out and just kind of say, okay, God, take our talents and use them. And you chimed in, and you just kind of, in a real sincere way, just offered that same thing up. Just, well, Lord, use us tonight. And we were all like going, oh my gosh, man, Aaron prayed. And then I remember you were attending all those things during the day, man. And I don't remember if did we buy you a Bible? Or
no, Don
McKinney.
Don McKinney sold me his Bible for $5.
He didn't give it to you?
He didn't give it to me. He said, hey, man, I got a Bible I'll sell you for $5.
Oh, wow. Oh, God rest his soul. But
I said, okay.
Had you asked, I would have given you mine. But anyway, I remember you just little by little, man, you started just growing and understanding. And man, I've admired your walk forever. As I've stood out in the weeds in the distance, I just go, yeah, well, you know what? I think God's real, because Aaron's actually he's doing the deed, man. You've always been an inspiration in that respect.
Well, you guys introduced me.
Well, and man, how thrilled I am, I tell you.
It's like the last time I went into Warehouse Ministries, I went in the door and breathed the air, and I said, the smell of my salvation. Because that smell man, of that place.
That is great.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But, all right, so now you're doing a bunch of different things. You moved here to Nashville.
I did.
And you started managing Charlie, and things just started.
I helped Charlie and his family move. He started producing some acts out of Nashville.
Charlie Peacock.
Correct. Charlie Peacock was producing some acts, and so he was living in Sacramento, coming to Nashville, and he produced some records for, like in the early days, Margaret Becker and some of those acts that were on some of the Christian labels. And he said, hey, I'm going to move to Tennessee. And so I said, well, I'll help you out. So I drove a truck, and he drove his family car and the kids, and they all moved to Tennessee in about 88, early 89. And then Charlie kept saying to me, hey, man, you should move to Tennessee, come out here and manage me. And, 77's, we were still going strong and making music out there. And then just due to just all kinds of circumstances of life and things, I thought, you know what, let's do it. And so I packed it up. And in late 89, we moved to Nashville. Mm-hmm. And I started managing Charlie. Continued to play with the Sevens until 91, actually. It got difficult flying back and forth and whatnot. But so worked with Charlie for a period of time, and then ended up starting a management company with another fella and started kind of doing some management of the 77's and then some other acts. And then we did that for about a year and a half. A fella named Paul Emery, he and I had a management company called Creative Management Group. And then we thought, you know what, man, we had a handful of employees, and we were all paying them more than we were making ourselves. And we thought, let's just blow this off. And so he ended up going to work for a company in St. Louis, which became kind of what Live Nation is now, is SFX, and went through Clear Channel and whatnot. He turned around, he hired me to go out as a rep for them to tour with Rich Mullins.
Right.
I toured with them for, during the Brothers Keeper tour. And then I came off of that, and through a series of circumstances, ended up tour managing David Copperfield, the illusionist. And I was on the road with David all over the world between 96 and 99. 600 shows a year, 48 weeks a year on the road.
Wow.
600. He 2 a day, every single day, 4 on Saturdays, 3 on Sundays.
And so what was your responsibility?
I was his tour manager. So I took care of logistics and handled the money, did all the box office settlements, and I ran a crew of 85 people, just getting us all over the world. It was a matter of, he had 88 tons worth of stuff that we had to take with all the illusion materials in them and all the mechanism that makes that happen. And so, I'd have to get a hold of a Rocket Cargo or somebody, and we'd take all the gear trucks down to the airport, palletize everything, load it onto a 747 and fly it to Amsterdam, and then get the crew and everybody over there. And then we'd have a German trucking company come down and pick it all up, and we'd pick up a German lighting crew and a video crew and whatnot, and then go tour Europe for 2-3 months.
Whoa. And
then we'd pack it up again, fly it out of Frankfurt, come back to the States, run around the U.S. for a few weeks, and we'd pack it. So we 3 months in the spring, 3 months in the fall, we went to foreign countries. One season we'd go to Europe, next season we'd go to Asia, next one we'd go to South America. And so I've been all over the world with that guy.
Wow, man. That's great. Did you have to sign a waiver of some sort? Non-disclosure.
Secrecy agreement, yeah. But what do you want to know?
Is he still
doing it? He doesn't tour like we did then. At the time he'd be in all the performing arts centers and theaters in the local cities, but and we didn't do Vegas except for a couple of weeks during that period. But he's in Vegas most of the time now. We'd come and you'd play like Louisville one night, Nashville one night, and then Atlanta. You'd set for the weekend and you'd sit in Atlanta for 2 or 3 days, and then you'd jump and hit, so you'd schedule it so you hit all the major cities on the weekends. You do multiple shows, and then you'd roll through all the smaller cities. Man, I was in every performing arts center in the country, hundreds and hundreds of them.
Man, yeah,
and it was a huge high dollar tour. Like I said, 85 people on the road. And so I really got my an education in touring on a worldwide basis. I mean, going into Russia and dealing with, we played in the theater inside the Kremlin.
Really?
So I'd walk across the street every morning from the hotel, past alongside of the Onion Dome, the Cathedral of Catherine, and, over to cross Red Square and go down to the Kremlin, knock on the door, and had to show them my little passes and all this stuff, and we stayed in Moscow for about 3 weeks.
Wow. And then you go in and do some magic.
Go in and do some magic. You bet.
Man.
It was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet. How long were you with them?
About 3 years.
3 years.
It was a real high dollar tour. So I mean, we were staying in the best hotels, and and I would usually stay on the same floor that David was on, and I would travel first class with him. I was always not very far away.
Yeah,
pretty close, and it was quite an experience to come from what we were doing in the 77's and all that stuff.
And Rich Mullins, the van tour.
Yeah, Rich Mullins on everybody in a van. Yeah. Rich in his Jeep. Then to Copperfield. Then when I came off of that tour, came back to Nashville, and I toured with Fernando Ortega for half a year or so. I went out with a handful of different people. And then...
and the Veggie Tales live.
I even did the Veggie Tales, 2 tours of the Veggies.
Wow. Touring with Larry Boy.
I was there when they built that tour. In other words, when we got together with the people who create all the Disney characters that wander around the Disney park, and built Larry and Bob and Junior Asparagus and all of them. It was actually a lot of fun. It was a fun tour.
Dang.
And then after that, I began to work for AEG Live, which is kind of the counterpart to Live Nation. AEG was doing a bunch of national tours, and so I ended up out with Brad Paisley and Kieth Urban and Dolly Parton and Alison Krauss and Reba and Kelly Clarkson and on and on and on. Kid Rock. And then at one point in time, they said, hey, we've got a new tour we want you to go out on. The AEG's a worldwide concert promoter.
What's that stand for?
It stands for Anschutz Entertainment Group. Phil Anschutz, the owner of AEG, he owns the Staples Center. He owns the LA Galaxy. He loves soccer. He owns everything under the sun. It's a big entertainment conglomerate. So, I was on the road with those guys, and they told me, they said, we've got a tour we want you to go out on to a fellow named Bill Gaither. And I thought, well, shoot, I know who Bill Gaither is, but the LA AEG office was doing Clapton. And I said, man, get me on something sexier than Gaither. I want to do Clapton. And, but I ended up on Gaither, and I actually ended up doing, between 2006 and 10, I ended up doing 200 shows with him. And after being out there, I thought, you know what, man, anytime you want to put me out with Gaither, it's all good with me, because there was zero drama.
Really?
None.
Huh?
We would just roll into an arena.
Everything was family.
It was all good, man. It's like you'd roll into an arena. He played to 10,000 people. We'd pack it up, roll out of town. I wasn't dealing with a bunch of drunks. I wasn't dealing with a bunch of drama. I wasn't, Bill, first weekend I was there, he called me onto his bus, and he says, well, young man, he says, listen, people are going to ask you, so what's the deal with that Gaither guy? Is it entertainment or ministry? He said, you just say yes. I thought, I'm going to like this. Right. So it actually turned, I still want to tour with Clapton once. I hear he's not doing well lately, but but I went out and did 200 shows with Bill Gaither. And then, little by little, it was other country acts that I went out with. And then I ended up leaving AEG at the end of 2010 and 2011. I tour managed for Sarah Evans, country singer, and she was opening for Rascal Flatts. At the end of that year, Rascal Flatts tour manager left and jumped to, I think, Blake Shelton. And so their management team pulled me over from Sarah Evans, who was managed by the same management company, and pulled me from Sarah into the Flats camp. And I've been there for about 7 years now. So it's a great team of guys. I don't have any drama on that tour either. It's a good team of people, and we have a lot of fun. They're playing a lot of music to a lot of folks, still playing in the amphitheaters and playing to 15,000 people a night. So
wow. So you guys took a break January and February?
The way Flats tour is kind of weekend warriors, what we call it. We leave town every Wednesday night, jump on buses, and go out, play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, back home Sunday. Sometimes I'm home in time for church. I sleep in my own bed, usually Sunday, Monday, Tuesday night, jump again Wednesday, and we do that from about mid-April through the end of September. As we take October, November, December, January, February off. The guys do a lot of charity work, maybe some one-offs in there, but for the most part, we tour during the summertime, and that's it.
Oh, yeah?
So
I didn't know that.
We're only doing about 60 shows this year, which is not, it sounds like a lot, but some new young country acts, they'll go do 160.
Yeah.
So we go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday night.
Yeah.
Back home.
You guys are pretty established.
They are. I mean, they're coming up. Next year's their 20th year.
Wow.
And to still be in the game and still get number one hits after 20 years is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, that is.
They're the most rewarded country act. I didn't know this, but it's like just, down through the years, CMA awards and all that kind of stuff. They're a good group to be with. I'm fortunate.
Well, man, it's I appreciate you being here today. And
my pleasure.
Time flies when we just start talking. We need to hang out and do this.
I'd love to.
And I want you to be careful out there on the road.
I shall.
All right, man. Love you, bro.
Love you too, Aaron.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording number one hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.